All right. Hello, everyone. Beth Barany here with Ella Russ. We're writing teachers and coaches and editors, and excited to bring to you today. What is our topic today? It's on line edits. How
Fun minutes.
line edits. We love line edits. How to tell what your fiction needs. Today, we're each bringing one line edit tip for you, and we plan to do a few more of these, and each bringing a tip. So, welcome, those of you who are joining us live. Go ahead and put in the chat, what are you working on? And if you feel comfortable, tell us where you hail from. I'm in Oakland, California, near San Francisco, across the bay from San Francisco. The fog is clearing, the sun is coming out. And Gayla, you are in Walnut Creek, just 30 miles east of me.
Very, very different weather here. It's been sunny all day and it feels like summer again. So,
Yeah, I hear
but
it's going to be quite warm where you are. I'm
yeah,
protected a bit by the marine layer, which I adore. So, welcome, writers. We specialize in helping genre fiction writers. I have a specialty in science fiction and fantasy writers, since that's what I write. My stories have romantic elements and mystery. I have a sci-fi mystery thriller. I have a young adult action adventure series. I'm working on a new fantasy epic adventure, fairy tale inspired. I have sweet paranormal romances as well, all magic. Everything's magic or sci-fi. And you, Gala, you are a specialist in
romance. So I'm a romance writer, and I also right now I'm writing an urban fantasy with a romantic subplot. And I work with people who write romance, romantasy, women's fiction, or genre fiction, especially if you want to have a romantic subplot in your genre fiction, including your memoir. So I am all things expert romance, I guess.
yes.
Plus, I really like structure. So if you have questions about book structure, story structure, scene structure, sentence structure, I might be helpful there as well, like help you organize all of those things in your head.
And Gala has 2 summer classes coming, which we're going to share about in about 20 or so minutes. But today we're going to bring to you our 2 line edit tips. And then I'll also share with you my Edit Your Future membership for sci-fi fantasy writers. So go ahead and put in the chat if you care to where you are and what you're working on. We love hearing about what people are working on. And just a sidebar, which at some point we're going to actually go public with this. Gayla and I run Creative Entrepreneur Incubator, which is for creative writers who want to serve other creative writers, whether a coach or editor or VA or some other awesome way. So that will be a topic for another time.
I'm gonna show again the sticker.
Our pretty little stickers, Creative Entrepreneur Incubator. We're on Instagram, and we have creativeentrepreneurincubator.com, which jumps you to our awesome quiz. And all right, let's dive in. Gosh, we didn't decide this. Who's going first? We each have very different tip today. Yours is on dialogue, the difference between dialogue tags and beats, and mine is how to integrate setting on the sentence level. So, since that's one of my passions, actually, is world building and setting. So, do you want to start today?
Sure, I can do it. Yeah, dialogue is definitely one of my things. A lot of times when I write my stories, especially if I get stuck, I end up writing what I call blank room dialogue, where there's just the dialogue, there's nothing else in there, and I kind of get the conversation out of me. And then afterwards, I can cut it, modify it, and then populate what's actually happening around it. It's one of the exercises I actually run in my Write Your Novel class. And for people who have never tried writing just naked dialogue, I recommend it. It can be intimidating, but it can also be so freeing. And you're going to learn something about yourself as a writer. Is this hard for you? Is this super easy for you? Why haven't I never done it? So again, for me, that is one of the things that I use when I'm stuck, because that makes it easier for me. I don't have to think about settings and everything else. But for some people, it's a challenge, and it's just good to know. It's good to know. Could be a
Yeah,
good tool for you.
that's really good to know. I didn't even realize it was a challenge. I too am very similar to you. My early drafts have a lot of just dialogue, a little bit of action, tiny bit of setting to remind myself where we are,
Yeah.
and that's it. Just keep going, boom. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
a script. And I also write scripts, and it was that part of script writing was easy. Yeah, very dialogue heavy.
Yeah,
Cool.
I love script writing and screenwriting. And in one of the classes, I think the deep dive class that I'm teaching in the summer, I'm actually doing a session which is dialogue tips based on screenwriting and playwriting, because there's certain things that you have to learn as a screenwriter and as a playwright to make that dialogue really, like, really, really interesting, because you have that's the center, that's the focal center a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to bring that. So let's go into the actual topic. First thing is, I always assume that everybody knows what the dialogue tag versus dialogue beat is. And then I'm like, people don't always know. So I'm going to start there. A dialogue tag is a word that identifies the speaker. That's the only role of the dialogue tag, is just to let the reader know who's talking. And the most common one is says or said. I say, she says, he said, whatever time and POV you're writing your book in. And I call this a said umbrella. So normally those are the invisible tags, the tags that people don't really pay attention, and they kind of disappear as they read them. They're going to be I'm going to use the past tense, said, asked, replied, and also modifications of voice, whispered, shouted. Things like that, there are more of them, but things like that usually go fairly unnoticed by the reader, and that is the point. That is why you want them. You usually want to put them in places where you want things to go faster, where the things that are happening on the page are all in the dialogue, and you're putting those tags just to orient the reader who's talking, and that's about all you care about. And in the dialogue tag world, you can have them located all over the place. You can have them be a dialogue, then comma, and quotation marks, quote closes, and then your tag. For example, he said, for example, this is not a game, he said. That will be a dialogue tag. And with dialogue tags, you always have a comma, and it's the he said, he's going to be small, and there's going to be the comma inside the quotation marks. You can put the dialogue tag at the beginning. You can say, he said, this is not a game. Then it's going to be, he said, with capital letter, comma, quotation opens, capital letter again, this is not a game, period. And then in the post that we're going to create after this, it's going to be all written out for you so you can look visually. It's a little easier. You can also have a dialogue tag that is in the middle. For example, this is not a game, I said, but you're making this one. Or this is not a game, I said, it's life. And the punctuation is going to vary whether this is all one sentence or whether you actually have two different sentences. But dialogue text can be all over the place. They're not just after the dialogue. So hopefully this gives you some ideas about the dialogue tags. Before I go into the dialogue beat, any questions from you, Beth? Anything you want to add on this one?
Well, when you're looking at people's manuscripts, what is the most common problem you notice when it comes to dialogue tags?
Mhm. There are two biggest things that I see. Problem number one is that the dialogue, no, actually three. First one is the dialogue tag is used too frequently. So every line has a dialogue tag. So, for example, this is not a game, he said. I know, she said. Why didn't you tell me? He said. You don't need that many. You literally need one every. If you have such a fast-paced dialogue when there is short phrase exchange, you need one every now and then just to reaffirm in the reader's mind, oh, that's the person who's speaking versus this, so they don't get confused. Or if you have three or more people speaking to again identify who's speaking, but you don't need them on every line. And that's usually a very, very, very beginner mistake. Then the next one is going to be using dialogue tags that are too demonstrative, too showy, and that are actually carrying your dialogue instead of your dialogue doing all the work. There's a caveat there. I never say that said is the only dialogue tag you can use. I am not that person. I think that there is absolutely room for other words that are more descriptive. To me, the rules come from, not the rules, like how I determine how many of other words to use versus said. My general personal rule for me when I write is I use about 20% of other words that are more colorful for tags, and about 80% are my said umbrella. Remember, it's not just said. There are other words in there, but the said umbrella, the invisible ones. And about 20% of the ones like that are more showy. Um, and then you're going to have to look at your, whether it's middle school, middle grade, YA, or adult. In middle grade, there are going to be a lot more very showy
Mhm.
dialogue tags. That's just the norm of the genre. That's how it is. It's sometimes hard for the readers actually to transition from having so many showy dialogue tags to not so many. And I see that in a lot of teen writers writing, they end up putting them more. In YA, there is going to be still more than in an adult. And then when you go into the adult, that's where I would say the 80-20 rule is a good application. But then you're going to look at your own genre. Like in romance, there's probably going to be more showy things, and there's going to be things like growled and hissed and moaned. Just because it's part of the genre, it's very much welcome and accepted and normal to have those. You don't want to have, again, every third one of them growled, growled, growled. It's going to get boring, and you basically are doing yourself a disservice. But there's nothing wrong with those. Look at, read in your genre, understand where you are on the middle school versus YA versus adult. And I would say the closer you're trying to get into literary fiction, the more you probably want to lean into the said umbrella
Mhm.
versus more colorful thing, because in the literary world, they tend to prefer less of colorful ones. So I'd say, did I say all three?
Two.
I think
I think
two.
that was two. One is
Oh,
using too many. The other is knowing your genre specific. Yeah.
one other thing, and I say this is a style choice. It doesn't mean you cannot do it. There are no rules around it, but it's a
Mhm.
stylistic choice. Some writers prefer to use a dialogue tag and a dialogue beat at the same time. For example, this is not a game. He said and stood up. Technically, grammatically, you do not need he said. If
Mhm.
you just put he stood up, that automatically gives us the action that you wanted to give and identifies the person who is doing the speaking. But if you really like that style, there are
Mhm.
no rules against that, and you need to put it in your style sheet and tell your line editor, I just like it this way. There are plenty of writers who do it this way. There are some genres who prefer it this way. It just needs to be a conscious choice. To me, it's the same thing with adverbs. Like, as long as it's a conscious choice and you're doing it because that's the way you like it, that's how it sounds good to you, again, go for it. But if you just didn't know that that was not necessary, and now you know, and now you can just put the action and omit the dialogue tag there, and you're like, oh, that sounds just fine, then maybe that's the way forward for you. You're
Yeah.
going to be the decider. So that's the
Great.
third one.
Yeah, that's great. So, and that's a great segue into dialogue beats, which you describe as a short action, gesture, emotion, or thought that breaks up dialogue and helps the reader visualize the scene and can replace or accompany tags. Just to give us a definition, thank you for providing that.
Yeah.
So, do you want to add something more to the definition of a beat?
No, that's about it. So the main thing is some people think that a beat is always an action. When we move, like when I jump to my feet, would be a move, or he stood up would be a beat. But a beat can absolutely be an emotion or internal thought as well. So you can say, this is not a game in your parentheses, and then afterwards, she knows it. So that's basically an internal commentary, right? Or this is not a game, my heart rate accelerates. This is also a beat. So you can put all of these different things in there together separately, and they are also going to show the reader who is speaking. And
Mhm.
you normally don't need a dialogue tag there. One of the things with dialogue beats that I see a lot of beginner writers making a mistake in is mixing in two different people's speeches and internal conversations. For example, if you're in your POV character's world, let's say I'm gonna say he, Percy, and then Percy's talking to Michael, and this is Michael's line of dialogue. This is not a game, Michael, stand up. And then Percy thinks that Michael should have not been standing up right now. And then there is the next line of dialogue that is actually Michael's. And because you had Michael stood up, then Percy's thought, and then the next line of dialogue, the reader is going to be like, is this the Percy
Mhm.
dialogue? Is this the Mark dialogue? Who is talking? It doesn't mean that you cannot put internal dialogue of your POV character inside the paragraph of your dialogue of somebody else talking. I mean, if you're a beginner writer, I would say just don't, because it can get tricky. But if you're more advanced and you want to play around, the key rule is the line right after the dialogue and right before the dialogue should clearly belong to the person who is speaking, but you can't technically put internal thoughts of the POV character in the middle. But your before and after need to clearly restate who is actually talking and who that dialogue belongs to. Again, if you're a beginner writer, I'd say just separate them into paragraphs. Dialogue, action beat for Michael, split it into paragraph, whatever the other guy is thinking, split it into the next paragraph, whatever the next guy is talking. Otherwise, I find beginners end up having this mistake where the dialogue is kind of like very unclear who it belongs to, and
Mhm.
readers do get confused. If a reader has to go back and reread that paragraph because they were like, "Who was talking?" You're taking them out of the story.
Yeah,
You're doing yourself a disservice.
yeah. So I think the overall takeaway for dialogue tags and beats, and something I've seen in people's manuscripts is if it's unclear who's speaking, and if it's too much talking head, what you were calling like the empty room, um, then we got some problems, which kind of segues us into the next thing that we were going to talk about. My line edit topic today was going to be about setting. So shall we transition?
I think so. Let's dive into setting. I think those are perfect complements to each other.
Very perfect. Yeah. While we were brainstorming what tips to offer today, we decided each of us would only offer one tip. Otherwise, this would be like 5 hours long. We both have so much to say. And also, it's a great exercise for both of us as writing teachers to just synopsize down to the core thing. So I'm actually going to start backwards. Well, we all need setting in our story. And in our first drafts, we may have the faintest of hints about our setting, or maybe you're the kind of writer who puts a lot of setting into your first draft. Awesome. When it comes time to edit your work, that's the domain of line edits. One of the domains. There's developmental, which is story editing, and character editing, and making sure those things are clear. And then now we're in the line edit phase where we're just really honing down to the sentence level and word choice level. So I have for you today some before and after examples, and I thought I would share them and then explain what it is why I made this choice. And this comes from my own work in progress. So this is my first draft material. Here's a before sentence, which I'll read in a second, and then I'm going to post in the after sentence. Again, first drafting my revision. So first revisions for me are kind of like first drafts. So this will go through many more revisions. So I just pulled a sentence out, the before sentence. The captain wrung his hands, but stopped when he realized Grace noticed his nervousness. And the POV is Grace. And then I added in some setting. Standing next to the blackwood writing desk, the captain wrung his hands, but stopped when he realized Grace noticed his nervousness. So my instinct here as the writer, when I was searching for a sentence, is I noticed in my own scene that I hadn't described the room at all. All we know is that they're in the captain's quarters. That's it. Nothing else. They're on a ship. And so I realized, okay, how do I convey that this is a wooden sailing vessel? How do I convey this feeling of other world? It's not our world. So that's why I came up with Blackwood. I don't think that exists in our world, but that just spontaneously came to me. I'm like, oh, there's trees called the Blackwood trees. Okay. So that's why, my intuition, my inspiration said, okay, standing next to the Blackwood writing desk. And in, 19th century, 18th century, before that, people had writing desks, and I greatly admire them. So, and I've seen ship captains' quarters where there will be a desk like embedded into the quarters, and it'll be part of the furniture, practically, or it'll be like bolted down. So, these are pictures in my head as I started creating this. So as I wrote this, I'm like, oh, I'm implying things here that the reader could get from this moment, that he's next to his writing desk. It's his quarters. He's next to probably a very personal location for him. He's not standing at the liquor cabinet. Like, of course, I could have him stand next to a liquor cabinet, or I could have him stand at the foot of his bed, like parade ready, at parade rest or something. Like, I just chose this. This was the first thing that came to me. and it conveys something to me that helps me actually go back and understand him better as a character. But also, I gave us a little bit of setting. And so, my logic in the story is, do we know where everybody is standing? I always want to know that. Don't just tell me they're in a room, tell me where they are in a room, because you want to give the reader enough information to see the scene, and then they'll fill in the blanks. So that's my little tip there. I'm often asking my readers, my writers at the beginning of a scene, well, where are we and what is the weather? So speaking of weather, actually, no, I'm not going to talk about weather yet. I am going to talk about weather in another example. So here's one more example. All right, another. I have 3 examples altogether. So again, this is still from Grace's perspective. So here's another sentence. The magic users froze, some blanching. So that's what came to me in my first draft. Okay, again, we're still in the captain's quarters. I wanted to describe it. Around the strategy table, filled with schematics and other scrolls, the magic users froze, some blanching. So again, I wanted to show what they were in the middle of. I probably would put a sentence like this maybe earlier in the scene. Maybe not. I don't know. That's decided in revisions, another layer of revisions. But I actually looked up, what is that table called where people are doing their war games? And I found, oh, it's called a strategy table. And I'm like, okay, good enough. And schematics, they're planning something. And then scrolls, schematics and other scrolls. Again, another piece of world building, and to indicate like this is a world that scrolls are normal. Like here in the modern world, we might say, iPads and sheets of paper or blueprints or something like that. So again, I'm trying to come up with terminology that gives us the world. And I'm putting my magic users, who so far in the story haven't been named, but a place to be. So this is how you can indicate things about your world, when you populate your world with artifacts, real artifacts, it tells the reader stuff without telling them. Like if I were to tell you that I have a block of Post-its on my desk, that would give you a sense of who I am, right? A sense of who I am, a sense of what era I live in, and what is she doing on her desk that she has Post-its on her desk. So when we populate our settings with the bigger pieces of furniture and the smaller artifacts, we tell our readers a lot. And they fill in the blanks. And then I have one more example. And this is from, I'm writing the story in 2 points of view. It is a fantasy romance. This is from Han, the male point of view. Before, he followed the magic group out of the stateroom and joined the captain on the mainstay. And I looked it up. Mainstay is not the right word. So I changed it. I changed it in the revision. He followed the magic group out of the stateroom, ignoring the winds, whipping the waves into whitecaps. Okay, alliteration. And joined the captain on the quarterdeck, pulling his cloak tight against the chill. So I did a lot of things here. It's a great transition moment, right? When we move the setting from one place to another is a great moment to give us kind of what we call in filmmaking, like a wide shot. We're starting to get, there's a little bit of a wide shot here because the wind and the white caps, we kind of get the sense that he's looking out and he's seeing the waves. The quarterdeck is the deck that's above the deck. So it's often where the captain stands. We're getting a sense of his kinesthetic. He's pulling his cloak tight. So I'm doing a lot of things here with his movement. And I can see this is a great moment. I could even add maybe another sentence here to like a little more interiority, right? So because right now we just have him moving and we have him feeling kind of, I guess I say he's ignoring it, but he's not really ignoring it, right? In fiction, when we say someone is ignoring something and then we write about it, some part of us is noticing.
There is technically a line editing advice around that. Actually, it's best to write about what is happening rather than what is not happening. So I would almost say instead of
Mm.
ignoring, you can just put a period there and say, you followed the magic group out of the stateroom period. The winds whip the waves into into the white caps as you join the captain on the quarterback,
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
that's just what's
yeah,
going on.
right.
And then his cloak getting tighter around him is basically his response to the wind, so that
Mhm.
you can yeah, I like that. It's a lot of times, it gets me into trouble a lot of times. I tend to on my first drafts put is what is not happening, and then on the second draft think like, okay, well, how can I show this? How can I show what is actually happening versus what
Yes,
is not?
absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm with you too. And I want to touch on a little bit like the revision process. I will revise things multiple times because
100%.
when we are creating new content after we've written the first draft, it's like another version of new content. And then that too needs reworking, rereading, questioning, does this work? Does this work? So
Yeah. I was talking to a client last week, and we were talking about creating emotion via changing the sentence rhythm and sentence structures. And we played with it, and it's such a fun topic, and it's like makes the writing so very different when you can get the hang of it. And she's like, "But when do you do it?" I'm like, "I usually do it like on my draft number 5, when I already have my line edits pretty tight, and the sentences and the descriptions are there and everything." And then I go and then I find those emotional moments where I want to play with emotions because of the sentence structure. So it's like draft number 5. So there are lots of like everything else is already lined up before then. There's so many drafts. It's not line editing is not a one thing.
yeah,
Even
it's
if you're working with a line editor, you usually have 2 rounds with a line editor, and hopefully you've done your own self line edits before that.
yeah. And I would say there's no hard and fast rule. It depends. Like I'll often share material that I think is pretty done because, and when I say pretty done, I mean like the story is going the way I want it, the characters, the actions, the larger actions, the dialogue, and then when that's really locked in, that's when I'll really do a double check for setting, for emotion, and for musicality. Um, so I just want to welcome all of you who've joined us. We're about to wrap up. We do 30-minute Substack lives on
You know,
Monday. So it's in and out. Yeah. Both Gal and I are teachers and coaches and editors, and I specialize in science fiction and fantasy. And if you want more support around editing your science fiction and fantasy, I have an Edit Your Novel membership for
great.
yeah. And it's so funny. I don't have the website memorized, so that's not it. So that information will definitely be in the article that will accompany this replay that goes up within about a day or two, usually. Bear with
No
that.
promises. It comes up anyways.
Yeah,
It happens.
it happens. It happens, and it's also on the past ones as well. It's called Edit the Future Sci-Fi Fantasy Revision Lab. We have monthly calls where we do line edits on your work because I really believe that's the best way to learn is when you get your own work looked at, when you get to look at your work with fresh eyes, and people start asking you questions and making suggestions, and that's the best way we learn. Not some abstract idea in someone's book. No offense to all the great books out there on editing. I can't read them, honestly. I can read a lot of other writing books, but those have never made sense to me. So that's my big offer. And Gala, you have 2 awesome writing classes coming this summer.
Yeah, I have 2 classes during the summer. One is Write Your Novel Summer Edition. I basically run Write Your Novel 101 classes all throughout the year, but for the summers. Maybe this year I'm going to actually do it in the summer. There were a lot of requests, TBD, but I'm definitely running Write Your Novel Summer Edition, which is 12 weeks, 1 hour, Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific, where we meet. There is a small craft lesson similar to what we're doing today, kind of a small craft lesson, and then we apply it to your story, but we also are talking about what is working for your story, what isn't. We have a way to discuss and help you, and then we make sure that your plan for the summer, what are you going to do each week, is solid, because summers usually are so volatile in my world, whether you have kids or whether you're off for the summer, whether you're traveling, so many writers end up not writing the entire summer because it just feels untenable to continue. In this class, the goal is to keep you writing, whether you're writing 500 words in a week, 1,000 words in a week, or 100 words. It all adds up. You are going to end up being in your story, and you're going to have words on the page by the end of the summer versus, oops, 3 months have passed by and I have to remember what was my story even about. And then the other class, which is on Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. It's only 8 sessions, and that is called a deep dive. That's for people who really are craft nerds, and maybe you know already what a dialogue is. Maybe you know already what settings are. Maybe you know already what line editing is, but you really want to get some deeper knowledge. So it's not a one-on-one. It's the kind of next level, and you want to nerd out, and you want to still apply to your story. Those are 2-hour long sessions, and they're very focused on craft and then application to your story. I love teaching nerdy crafts. So if you are the kind of person who loves learning that, that will definitely be a class for you. So
That's
lots
great.
happening
I
this
love
summer.
it. I love it. Those links will be definitely on our article that follows this video. Also, be sure to follow. I think if you're here, you're probably already following me, but please do follow Gayla as well at Gayla Russ Writing Conversations on Substack. So you can stay tuned. She does great interviews as well and craft tips. And I love your mindset articles as well. Just beautiful. Well, that's it for this week. Next time, we're going to do 2 more tips on live edits. If you have a special request for us, let us know. Put it in the comments, email us, contact us. We are here to support you. We love helping writers. We enjoy working together also. So this kind of spontaneously grew out of our other project, our Creative Entrepreneur Incubator project. And like, oh, let's do Substacks. We both love Substacks. So doing Substack Lives. That's it for this week, everyone. Yeah, we'll sign off. So good to see you all and see you next time. Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Bye.